So first and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Kakadash, and double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. So another week out here, week in, week out, doing this work as Yahushua has commanded, being on the highways and byways. And today I'm going to start talking about, what is it that's going on in the world as regarding to this gospel, because more and more you have all these Christians, so-called Christians, popping up talking about how, the Hebrew Israelites. And you just see, that's a more of a common occurrence of people making TikTok videos, scoffing and mocking. Recently you had that guy Drewski, made a giant mocking video over IUIC, and ultimately the whole, Hebrew Israelite thing, as they call it. What they don't understand is that, the world calls us the Hebrew Israelites, but essentially, we're just the true believers. That's all it comes down to. If you could really call it what it is, we would be the true Christians. It's just that we don't say that term Christian because that term is connected to, this new day Christianity, which is nothing but a false gods, a false doctrine. So what's happening is ultimately what was written in Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, Revelation chapter 11, which goes into the Great Awakening. So let's first start in Ezekiel 37. And it really goes back to Deuteronomy 32 when it goes into how, they're going to remember themselves in the land of their captivities. But let's start at Ezekiel chapter 37 and verse 1. It says, "The hand of Yahweh was upon me, and he carried me out in the spirit of Yahweh, and set me down in the midst of the valley which was full of bones, and caused me to pass by them round about, and behold, there were very many in the open valley, and they were very dry." So this is a vision that Ezekiel is having. It says, "And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Lord Yahweh, thou knowest." Again, he said unto me, "Prophesy upon these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of Yahweh. Thus saith Yahweh unto these bones, Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live." And that is symbolic as to what's happening today. Okay, that we are speaking this word and life is entering back into the Israelites, which, give me a second, I'm gonna get some. Their ears were getting cold. But as I was saying, that's what I was talking about here, is talking about the Israelites. So, give me a second. So when we go to, you jump down to verse 11, okay, it pretty much gives the explanation as to who those dry bones are. It says, "Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried, and our hope is lost. We are cut off for our parts." Right, so those dry bones was talking about the Israelites, how they're in a spiritually dead state. Okay, and that is the state that our people are in today before they hear the word. They're lost in the world, following the gods of the other nations. And that goes back to the curses that the Most High threw upon us, right? He said that, hey, we're going to be scattered throughout all four corners of the earth to worship gods made out of wood and stone. So we see that happening. We see that happening in full effect. And that's why, when you look at all the nations, the so-called Latinos, Negroes, and Native Americans are the only ones that don't really have a true history, right? They can bring out the history of how the Chinese go all the way back, how the Africans go all the way back. When it comes back to, what we're taught in school about the Negroes and the Latinos, the natives, all they teach is, oh yeah, they go back to being slaves. They don't go back any further. Because if they were to, then all this history would come out. The history about how those Negroes here in America that were brought on slave ships, it would come out that they were the Moors. Okay, that they were actually kings, priests, and rulers over there in the land they call Europe. Okay, for 1,000 years. It's called the Byzantine Empire. There's another one. It says the Byzantine Empire, the Dark Empire, if I remember correctly. But it was that time when Jake was ruling over there. And the Moors were Israelites that believed in Islam. Okay? So, the point is that those dries is talking about the Israelites. Those dry bones is talking about the Israelites and how, we forgot who we are. We're in a low state. Now, with that comes what it says. Verse 9 says, Then said he unto me, Prophesy unto the wind, prophesy, son of man, and say to the wind, Thus saith Yahweh, Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army. And that is what the world is seeing right now. That's why, this is getting so much traction, because the Lord is waking up his elect. Okay, and a great army is going to stand up, which standing upon your feet is symbolic for being confident, knowing who you are. It says that in Revelation, in the 11th chapter, I'm going to get that after this chapter, how, they stood upon their feet and great fear fell upon them which saw them. Because in these nations, the elites up top, they know who we are, okay? They know who we are. They understand what's going on. It's just that, as it says in Obadiah and Isaiah 14, that the pride of thine heart had deceived thee, and thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. Talking about these Edomites. Right? They have so much pride that they think that they can outsmart the Most High. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So, when you keep reading in Ezekiel 37, it says, So I prophesied as you commanded me, and the breath came into them. And that's what we're doing by this word. Okay, we're putting the breath back into our people. And only the elect are going to have that breath. Okay, the rest of our people are going to ultimately be destroyed. So, if we keep going in Ezekiel 37, then it starts going into the 12 tribe side. Okay, which that is a major thing when it comes to, the awakening. And the reason why we have the sign is because it is written in this chapter. So, Ezekiel chapter 37 and verse 15, it says, The word of Yahweh came again unto me, saying, Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. Right, which is going into the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Right, all 12 tribes being combined. Which, that's what's going to happen when Yahweh Shai comes back. Okay, all 12 tribes are going to be one. Or there's not going to be two kingdoms anymore. It's just going to be one kingdom. So, it says, And join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. And when you go into that word stick, it goes into a wooden plank. So it was talking about, you put, the southern kingdom on the stick, the northern kingdom on the stick, and make it one stick going into a sign. And it breaks it down in the next verse. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, wilt thou not show us what thou meanest by these? Right? So people are supposed to see the sign and be like, what does this mean? Right? It's like a hook. Like in fishing, you got the hook. And as soon as you hook the fish, hey, now you got to pull it out to see if it's good or bad. As Yahweh Shai said, how the net is cast into the sea and it bringeth good and bad fish. The bad are thrown out, but the good are ultimately, saved. So it's the same thing with this word. So, Yahweh Shai told his disciples, how they're fishing. I believe it was Peter. Come with me, I have made you fishers of men. So also Jeremiah 16 and verse 15, it talks about, actually let's get that, because that goes hand in hand with what I'm bringing out. Jeremiah 16. Jeremiah chapter 16 and verse 14, it says, therefore, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that it shall no more be said, Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Right? So there's going to be a time where the Lord has a new glory. Okay? They're going to call the Lord upon a new title. Okay? Not just remember him for what he did in ancient Egypt. It says, but Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of Egypt, or Salakia. It says, but Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers. And that's the new title, which is something that the Lord is not being called upon today. Okay, nobody calls the Lord by that title because it hasn't happened yet. Okay, this is a future prophecy. And this is talking about the Lord coming and saving the Israelites from here, America, and Babylon the Great. Right? When it says the land of the north, this is the land of the north, North America. And this is where the great salvation and destruction is going to take place. Okay, every single prophet talked about the great city Babylon. Okay, and how in 1 hour it was going to be destroyed. Okay, and how this was going to be the most wicked place to have ever existed. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Right? We're seeing how here anything flies. Okay, you can worship any religion, do anything you want. Okay, that is the very basis of Satanism. It's do as thou wilt. Do whatever you want. Because the contrary, what the Lord actually wants is for you to do his way, to follow a specific path. So we live in a satanic world, and America is the capital. So it says, from the land of the north and from all the lands whither he had driven them, and I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers. Right, going into how the Lord is going to bring us back to the Holy Land. Okay, and that right there proves that those people over there in the Holy Land aren't the true people, because the Lord is the one that's going to take the Israelites back over there. Okay, not 1948 Balfour Declaration. Okay, the Israelites are not supposed to take themselves back to the land as they supposedly did. So another thing too is that it says that when the Israelites go back, all 12 tribes are going to be over there. And when you go into what they say, oh no, we don't know where the other 10 tribes are at, the lost 10 tribes. So they don't fit the prophecy because all 12 tribes are not there. So there's a lot of things, a lot of prophecies, you can pull out to prove they're not the people. And that's something that, this world doesn't have. They don't have the spirit of Yahushai. Okay, and it says in Revelation, I believe it's 19, it says that the spirit of Yahushai is the testimony of prophecy. Or no, the testimony of Yahushua is the spirit of prophecy. Okay, so this world doesn't have that. Okay, they don't have the spirit because and it's clear, right? If I were to go to this church right here, which is completely going off just reading it, they say Jehovah Nissi. right? So right off the top, they believe the name is Jehovah, which that's very easy to disprove just with the fact that the letter J wasn't invented till, I believe, 1524 by a man called Gian Trissino. So there was no letter J's, okay, 2,000 years ago. So what were they calling the Lord? Obviously, it ain't no Jesus and it ain't no Jehovah. So, but the point, if I were to go in there and ask them about what does Revelation 13:16 mean? What does Revelation 20 mean? What does Isaiah 14:13? Jeremiah 49:50, 51? Ezekiel 37, Ezekiel 36:5. If I were to ask them all these things, all these prophecies, they wouldn't know because the Spirit of the Lord is not dwelling there. Okay, the Lord dwelleth not in tabernacles made by hands. Okay, and he doesn't dwell in that. Okay, he's dwelling with his men out there on the highways and byways as he commanded. Okay, here it is. Yahweh Shai said, hey, do this. Okay, I came to do the will of my Father. Be ye as me. Sin not. But all these churches tell you, oh, it's okay for you to, not follow the commandments. You don't got to follow the Old Testament commandments anymore. That's done away with. They're literally contradicting themselves. They're not even going by what's written. So it's just a bunch of false doctrine in there and a bunch of singing and hollering. And the reality of the fact is that a lot of people in those churches, a lot of people, majority of people in the churches are Israelites first. You find that it's always Latinos, Negroes that be filling up those churches. But the thing is that, there's people in there that are in there with actual, good intention. They're in there trying to, seek the Lord. As it says, they have a zeal of the Most High, but not according to knowledge, right? So they have that, spirit to seek the Lord, but ultimately they are lost, okay? They're looking for the Lord, but they are lost. They don't know where to look. And these false prophets, these false teachers, they have a certain understanding of the scriptures, and they're leading the flock astray, leading those people farther and farther away from the truth. So, and it says it in Romans 11:7, how Israel had not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. Right? So, our people are seeking for the truth, but only the elect are going to find it. Okay? The rest are going to be blinded and destroyed, because the Lord doesn't want them to get it. He doesn't want them to repent. It literally says that how, lest they hear the word and repent and ultimately be delivered. So, let's go keep reading in Jeremiah 17 and verse 15 again. It says, but Yahweh liveth that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers. Behold, I will send for many fishers, saith the Lord, and they shall fish them. And after will I send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill, and out of the holes of the rocks. And that is, the first part is what's happening right now. Okay, the Lord has sent his fishers, and we're out here fishing. And the average person will look out here, see me out here, not a lot of people walking, especially because, it's snowing. But this is what we're doing the fishing by. The fishing is being done by the way of the YouTube, by the way of the internet. That's how the heavy lifting is done. Okay? Even in the name, it's so spiritual, internet. You fish and you cast that net out into the sea to grab fish. It's just the same thing that we're doing. And when you really think about it, the internet was made for the gospel to go out, because it says, I believe in Matthew 24, that, and I'm gonna be quoting scriptures a lot just because I don't have a phone to really type them in, and I don't know all of them by heart. But it says in Matthew 24 that this gospel should be heard throughout the entire world, and then shall the end come. Right? So everybody has to hear it first, and then that's going to happen. And if you were to ask yourself, how would that take place, in the ancient world, where everything was, walking, there was no internet. How would they get it to everybody? The answer is it would be impossible. So that's why the internet was created. It was to get this word to everybody in the entire world. Because now by the means of just a smartphone and some satellite service, and you can download YouTube and hear the word. So everybody can hear the word now. And it was all to accomplish that, okay, to get this word out there, which I believe it's Psalm, I forgot what Psalm specifically, but it deals with the internet, but I don't remember it off top, and I don't want to get sidetracked. But it says, "Behold, I will send for many fishers, saith the Lord, and they shall fish them. And after will I send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill, and out of the holes of the rocks." And that's going into that spiritual power, right? Because once the Lord raises us up and gives us those spiritual bodies, okay, we are going to be gods. Okay, we're going to be immortal and be able to, all these, we're going to be able to be like all these superheroes, all these comics. We're going to be able to do all that. So with that power comes bringing in the order that Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai is going to establish, which is the Israelites on top and the heathens serving us. And the thing about that is that they're not going to want to get in line at first. Okay, it actually talks about that in Zechariah chapter 14. Let's go there now. Zechariah chapter 14. Zechariah chapter 14 and verse 16. It says, "And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." Right? So I'm going to keep reading. It says, "And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. And if the family of Egypt go not up, and come not that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. This shall be the punishment of Egypt, and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." Right? So these other nations, they're not going to want to get right. Okay, because they're heathens. They don't really believe in Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. Right? They're going to be able to see, or that's going to help them, but their spirit is never going to be aligned fully with, how the Israelites are going to be. So when it's time to, go to the Feast of Tabernacles to come and serve the Lord, they're not going to want to do it. And there's going to be a punishment for that. And that punishment is going to be brought by, those Israelite men, those powers. As it says, he shall send hunters, and they shall hunt them out of every holes of the rocks, which that also deals with, us bringing out those elites from those bunkers and putting them in chains. You could read about that in, let's go there now, in Isaiah chapter 26. Go this way. Isaiah chapter 24 and verse 19. It says, "The earth is utterly broken down. The earth is clean as all. The earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage. And the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again." And this is talking about the thermonuclear destruction. Okay, it's talking about how that those missiles are gonna shake this earth to the core. Okay, and when you read other scriptures, it talks about, the great earthquake. So it says, and it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. And they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. Right? So that's exactly what we just read in Isaiah chapter, or Jeremiah 16 and 16. How he's going to send out hunters to gather them out of the holes of the rocks. Right? Going into gathering these elites from those bunkers and throwing them in those prisons. It says, then the moon shall be confounded and the sun ashamed when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem for his angels gloriously. Okay, and this is all talking about the kingdom. Okay, so going back to Ezekiel chapter 37, and we read Ezekiel 37 and verse 19. It says, say unto them, thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. Which that's going into, as I was saying, that all 12 tribes are going to become one. It says, and the sticks wherein thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes, and say unto them, thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And this is exactly, what we're doing today. We're telling our people, we're out here preaching with a sign, telling our people the Lord is coming back to save us from all the lands where we have been scattered, to make us a nation of rulers, kings, and priests that are immortal, to give us all these universes and galaxies and planets, okay, to make us the top of the top, the best, to establish righteousness and peace on this earth. We're telling them all these things, okay, exactly as it says we're supposed to. And we tell them all these things, and all our people could think, since they've been oppressed for so long, is, oh, we want to save Esau. But what about Esau? That's straight Stockholm syndrome. But it says, make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and a one king shall be king to them all, and there shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions, but I will save them out of all their dwelling places where they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their power. And I'm going to just keep reading to finish it off. It says, they shall also walk in my judgments, and observe my statutes, and do them, and they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I'll place them and multiply them, and I'll set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them, yea, I will be their power, and they shall be my people, and the heathen shall know that I, Yahweh, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. Right, so these other nations gonna know that, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua is dealing with them. Okay, which that right there proves salvation is not for everybody. So, a lot was said there, but what first popped out to me, or what came to my attention reading that, was the fact that it says that we were never going to defile ourselves anymore with idols. And the reason is because the law is going to be placed inside of us. Okay, you go to Hebrews, the 8th chapter. Hebrews chapter 8 and verse 8, it says, "For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah." Right? So the covenant is not with all nations. Okay, it's with the Israelites. And the reason it says house of Israel, house of Judah, is because the northern kingdom was referred to as Israel, Ephraim. Okay. When it says that, a lot of the times it's talking about the northern kingdom. And the southern kingdom is referred to as Judah primarily. So, also the northern kingdom is also referred to as Joseph, Israel. So, it's talking about how all 12 tribes, they're going to have that new covenant. It says, "Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith Yahweh. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Yahweh. I will put my laws into their mind, and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest." Right? And that's why we're never going to go off again, because that law is going to be programmed inside of us. Okay, it's going to be impossible for you to go off. It's going to be like breathing air right now. You do it unconsciously. It's going to be the same thing with the law. So that's what, the second covenant is dealing with, and that's why we're never going to go off. And these nations are not part of that, which when you go into Isaiah, the 2nd chapter, let's get that. Isaiah, the 2nd chapter proves that. I think also Micah, the 4th chapter, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure about that one, but Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 1. And then the header here says, Isaiah prophesies the coming of Hamashiach's kingdom. And it says, "The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of Yahweh's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem." Right? So when you go into, what this is talking about, this is talking about these heathens coming to the Holy Land to learn the law, because they're not going to have it inside of them. Okay? They're not part of that second covenant. And this proves that. One more time. It says, "And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem." Right? So they will have to be taught the law. Okay? So showing you that difference, and showing you that the Lord, okay, he has a chosen, and he hasn't changed. Right? People always try to say, oh no, the Lord had to change a heart, he changed his mind. But it says in Malachi 3:6, "For I am the Lord that changed not, therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed." Right? So the Lord hasn't changed. The same back then, the same today. And he still has only one nation he's dealing with. It's just that, when it comes to the New Testament, the reason they don't understand that it's only, one nation is because the whole red book, the Apocrypha, has been taken out. Okay? If you were to get a 1611 King James version Bible, you would find that there's books in there that are not in your standard King James version today. Right? They're in the 1611, but not in the standard today. And those books are the books of, Maccabees, the book of Tobit, the book of Bel and the Dragon. These are all books that have been taken out, history that has been omitted, and that those books were in between the Old and the New Testament. Okay, so it is a very major part when it comes into, understanding the New Testament. You got to read the books prior, and the book of Maccabees specifically is what gives you the understanding as to why was Paul talking to to the people in Rome. Why was he why do you have the book of Romans or Ephesians or Thessalonica? Why do you have these books? Why is it that they're referring to, they said that there's no difference between the Jew or the Gentile, the Jew or the Greek? Why is that? The reason, is you got to read the red book. You got to read the book of Maccabees. And in that book, let's actually get it. In this book, it tells you how let's go to First Maccabees. It tells you how the Israelites were Hellenized. Okay, the Israelites were made to be Greeks. We're following the ways of the Greeks, of the Romans. Okay, so First Maccabees chapter 1, and I'll start at verse 11. It says, in those days went there out, and actually, I'll start at verse 7 just to give a little context. It says, so Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. Right, so giving the history of Alexander the Great, and after he died, his 4 generals took over, which, if I remember correctly, it was Antigonus, Seleucid, Antiochus, and Ptolemy, if I remember correctly. His 4 generals. But it says that evils were multiplied in the earth after he died. And the reason is because that is when the Edomites first started ruling. Okay, at the globe entirely. Okay, was starting with Alexander. So evils were multiplied. And it says, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well, and certain of the people were so forward herein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. And that is the history that you have to understand as to why it says there's no difference between the Jew or the Greek. Right? That Greek that it was talking about there is talking about an Israelite that was following the ways of the Greek. And with Yahushai, there's no difference between that Israelite lost in the Greek way and an Israelite following this law, statutes, and commandments. Because now the salvation is primarily based on faith. Right? They both can make it if they have faith in Yahushai, okay, and they repent. They follow the commandments to the best of their ability. Right? That's part of it too. That's why it says in Romans 3, the last verse, that, let's actually get that since I can't put it up top. Romans 3. Romans 3 and verse 31 or 30, it says, seeing it is one God, which shall justify the circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith. Right? So the circumcision is dealing with those Israelites that were following the law, and then uncircumcision is dealing with those Israelites that were following the ways of the Greeks. As it literally says, once again, 1 Maccabees 1 and verse 15, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Right? So these Israelites in the Greek way were considered uncircumcised, were considered Greeks, heathens. So, reading in Romans 3 and 30, it says, seeing it is one God, which shall justify the circumcision by faith, and uncircumcision through faith. Do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yea, we establish the law. Right? So just because we're going to be saved by faith, it doesn't mean that you forget about the law. No, you still got to establish it. You still got to follow it. So, going back to 1 Maccabees, it says, we'll start at verse 41. 1 Maccabees 1:41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice. And actually, before I keep going, that's a point I want to bring up, is that they said that they were forced, okay, pretty much King Antiochus said, hey, you gotta follow the Greek way. And it says that the laws of the land were strange, right? So being a Greek, right, wearing the hat, exercising naked, and worshiping Bacchus, Saturn, Venus, the planets. This, the feast of Bacchus, right, which is endless partying, right, which that's what we see today still. So all these laws of the land were strange to the Israelites. And it's funny it says that because today, to the average Israelite, the laws are not strange anymore, right? It's common practice. It's normal. It's accepted. It is what it is. But if you were to tell them, look at the law of the Israelites, of our people, they would look at that as being strange. So, ultimately, this is why the whole thing of repenting is important, because you got to put off, that old man, the conversation of the old man. You got to put off the world and go back to what the Most High, put out. So I just found that interesting how it said, the strange laws of the land. It says, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. Which, if you were to tell Jake today, hey, you ain't supposed to eat no pork, they would look at you sideways, right? But, you read the stories about, I forgot what man it was exactly, but it was during this time period, how you had this Israelite who was literally going to go sacrifice some swine in the temple. And this Israelite, he was so zealous that he went up to him and just, took his life right there for committing that abomination. So, you read the stories such as of the woman and the 7 holy children, how they were all put to death by Antiochus because they simply wouldn't eat a piece of pork. And, you would tell somebody like that today, would you be put to death for not eating a piece of pork? And they'll tell you, I eat that piece of pork willingly. So, that's how far our people are gone. And it shows you the difference, how, we used to be a people that feared a sinning, feared a disobeying Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. But through the captivities and being under these nations, that fear has been lost. But going back to what we started with today, it is being brought back because the elect are pushing out that vibration on the earth. Okay? And it's affecting the whole world. So the fear of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai is being brought back into the world. And that right there, I might make a lesson on that. But verse 48, it says that they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. Right? So that's why it was being pushed. One of the main reasons it was being pushed to the Israelites to stop following the law is so that we would forget it. And the thing is that, they were saying that back then, trying to do it back then, but that actually happened around about this time, right? Our people were following the ways of these Europeans, the Spaniards, the French. They followed the white Jesus Christ. And what ended up happening? They lost everything they ever knew. They forgot everything that had to do with the commandments. And now you're trying to tell our people follow the commandments, and they look at you like you're the crazy one. So, there's a saying that they say, history repeats itself. And the reason that takes place is because it's the same spirits coming back doing the same thing. The concept of reincarnation. But it says, and whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. Right? So it was mandatory for you to follow the ways of the Greeks, or else they would just get rid of you. And through fear, many Israelites consented and ultimately did what they had to do. So, and talking about the elect, those righteous Israelites, in verse 62, I'll go back to 58. It says that when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire. Right, so they're burning, all the scriptures that were around. It says, and wheresoever was found with any the book of the testament, or if any consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death. Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God, at which time according to the commandment they put to death certain women that caused their children to be circumcised, and they hanged the infants about their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit, many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they chose rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant, so that they died. There is very great wrath upon Israel. And that right there shows you, that true confidence, that true faith to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, to Yahweh. Not it's Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, but that these men, these women, they were immovable when it came to the Lord. They chose to die rather than to follow the ways of these other nations. And it's going to be the same thing right about this time, right? Those same spirit of those Edomites back then forcing Jake to do some wickedness. It's the same thing that's going to happen now. And the same thing with you're going to have to stand it out, until the end. And let's actually get that in Revelation. Revelation, the 20th chapter. Revelation chapter 20 and verse 4. It says, "And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahushua and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with the Mashiach 1,000 years." Now, the key point there is it says those that were beheaded for not taking the mark and not bowing down to the system. So the same thing back then, if you don't bow down to that Greek way, you'll be put to death. Same thing today. If you don't bow down to this American way, the new technocracy that they're pushing forth, you are going to be put to death. And ultimately, if that's your lot, that's your lot. And the Lord is going to give you a strong enough spirit to be able to endure it. You're going to have the faith in that day to say F it, to the end. And, that's a righteous thing, being a true martyr. But, as I was saying, also, these Edomites are going to come down hard. And we can read that in Revelation, the 2nd chapter. A couple places it says it. Revelation 2 and verse 10, it says, "Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried. And you shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life." Right? So when it talks about the devil, that word there goes back to the Greek word diabolos, which means adversary, adverse one, which is talking about these Edomites, those in power right now. So when they start rolling down hard, pushing their policies, okay, it says, "The devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried." If they start coming down hard, pushing these policies, and you don't line up with what they say, they're just going to throw you in those concentration camps. And it says, "Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life." Right? So some of us are going to be pushed to that limit. Okay? Hey, do you really believe when they have you, with that guillotine? Do you really believe when they're telling you, "Hey, we're going to put you, on the firing squad. We're going to execute you right here. We're going to execute your family if you don't do it"? All these points are going to be used to make you break. But it says that, the elect are not going to break. It says, "If it shall be possible, they shall deceive the very elect." But the elect, no matter what, are going to hold it out to the end. No matter what they have to give up, ultimately we know you're going to have to give it up all at the end, regardless. But no matter what, the elect are going to say no. You're going to say no to the image of the beast, the mark of the beast, and stay strong, so until the end. Endure unto the end. Those that endure unto the end, the same shall be saved, as it says. But let's go down to Revelation 3 and verse 10. So let's get the flip side of, okay, we'll be persecuted, but what comes with that? Revelation 3 and 10, "Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the earth, to try them that dwell upon the earth." Right? So because you've been holding steadfast in this word, being righteous the best you can every single day, when that hour of temptation comes, when everything starts collapsing, really, we see famine, we see hard times, the Lord is going to preserve us in that time. He's going to keep us. Okay, He's going to deliver us. And that's one of the reasons, why we're out here doing this thing, is we want to be delivered when all hell breaks loose. Because that is the only thing that is going to get you right in that day, is Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. Right? It says in Zephaniah that neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord. Right? So you ain't getting out of this one. You ain't going to be saved from a nuclear missile with your FRN notes, Federal Reserve notes, your dollars. That's not going to get you out of this jam. The only thing that's going to save you is Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. So It says, behold, I come quickly, hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Right? So you got to hold on to this thing. Right? The Lord gave you a portion of faith. He gave you a lot. And you got to make sure that you stay doing what you got to do. Because if you don't, if you don't water that seed, that seed is going to perish. And there's a reason if the Lord gave the parable of the seed and the sower, the seed, how the word is the seed, and he gave all those parables, those examples. And you got to water that seed or else it ain't going to grow. So that goes into, every single day being locked into this. Are you focused on prophecy? Are you focused on what's happening in the world? Are you reading? Are you praying? Are you fasting? Scriptures talk about how that is our shield. That is our defense. That is our weapon. Our weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but spiritual. So, as it says, behold, I come quickly, hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Right? So stay locked into doing what you got to do. And let's go to Revelation 12:12. That's the one I want. Revelation 12:12. It says, therefore, rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And that's what we're about to start seeing very, very soon, which we're already seeing it. The whole thing with DJ Trump and ICE and targeting the Mexicans, the Latinos, even the Negroes. That's Jacob's trouble, the beginning of Jacob's trouble, and this devil coming down with great wrath, pushing his draconian laws. Right, let's get that. Revelation 13 and verse, Revelation 13, was it 13? No, Revelation 13 and 11. So giving a breakdown as to how these devils operate. It says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Right, so this beast ultimately dealing, with the system, and it says two horns like a lamb. So going into your left and your right wing, right, left wing, right wing, part of the same bird. Two horns of the lamb, one horn over here, one over there. They're both part of the same animal. So dealing with the system, how this place operates, the left right paradigm. And it says, and he spake as a dragon, which that word dragon goes into fierce, powerful, wicked, cruel. And there's actually an Athenian, a ruler called Draco, which that's where you get the term draconian laws, because Draco had such a strict judgment that everything had the same capital punishment. So if you murdered someone, it would be put to death, and if you stole a candy, you would be put to death. And that's what's called draconian laws. How the least point of the law is equal to the greatest point of the law. And that's how they operate. Okay, that's how they're going to be pushing their policies, is through draconian laws. Oh, you don't want to take that chip? Okay, we'll just put you to death. That's what's literally going to happen. So, it says, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. But that first beast is dealing with the ancient Roman Empire. Okay, that was the first beast. So this beast, this system, is following everything that ancient beast used to do. That's why you see that America resembles the ancient Greco-Roman Empire in the exact same ways. And when you look at the concept of the Senate, what they do today, that goes back to the Greeks and the Romans. When you look at the architecture, how they build with those pillars and the triangle top, that goes back to the Greco-Romans, which really goes back to the Edomites. It's all the same Edomites, because if you go to where the Edomites used to live at, in Petra, Jordan, you look at their habitation, it's the same thing. They had the pillars with the square triangle roof. Okay, it's the same people. They are the only people that build like that. So, it says, and he doeth great wonders, or it says, which Verse 12, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed, right? Because the ancient Roman Empire fell, right? That was the wound, but it was healed because through this beast, it has came back, okay? If you understand what I'm saying, through this beast, that first beast was healed. It's came back. Okay, America is the reborn Roman Empire. It says, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of beasts, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. Right? So, by the way of this technology, they're going to be able to deceive the masses. Okay? And a big part of that is going to be, that Neuralink. Here it is. They're going to tell you, oh yeah, if you put that Neuralink in your mind, you get the mark of the beast, get that Neuralink, we're gonna be able to make paraplegic people able to walk again, blind people able to see again. They're gonna be able to play video games with your mind. They're gonna be able to, use all types of technology with your mind. They're gonna promote it as being a savior, as a good thing. And the thing is that you are gonna be able to do all those things. It's just that what they're not telling you is that if you take that, you are slated for destruction. You have no chance for salvation, and you are just going to be destroyed. That's what they're not telling you, right? So that's the part of the deceiving, is they're giving you 1/3 of what's going to happen and not telling you the rest, because the 2/3, the bigger portion, is what actually matters, is that making it out of this place. So it says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Right? So if you don't follow their image, which goes into their way, what they're striving for, right? The NWO 2030 agenda, right? If you don't follow and bow down to what they are pushing, you will be put to death. Okay, we literally just said it. And it's the same thing that happened back then. You weren't following the Greek way, guess what? Antiochus said, whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king should be put to death. It's the same thing. So, hey, we're seeing history repeat itself in a certain matter. And it says, and he calls it all, both small and great. And another thing too is it says, and he had power to give life into the image of the beast. Right? So they're going to accomplish all these plans that they have. They're going to have those 15-minute smart cities. They're going to have, technocracy. They're going to have the chip. They're going to have all these things. They're going to get to that point. It's just that when they're at the max of accomplishing everything, right? When they're about to accomplish everything, that they're going to be like, damn, we did it all. That's when Yahweh Shai is going to come back. Because it says that in the fullness of their sufficiency, they shall be in straits. Right? So at the fullness of their plans, the Lord is going to throw a monkey wrench in there and just going to mess up everything. So it says, and he calls it all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Right, one more time. And he calls it all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Right? So if you're dead homeless, you got to take the chip. Right? If you're a billionaire, okay, Steve Jobs or type, Mark Zuckerberg, you got to take the chip. Free and bond. Be free. We out here. Got to take the chip. You in the prison system, you got to take the chip. Everybody is going to be put in that situation of, do I take it or not? And because it's going to be such a global thing, there's going to be a lot of global pushback. And that's why they're going to push so hard on, you know what? If you don't take it, you will be put to death. They're just going to take it there. If you don't take it, you're just out of the system. It says, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Right? So you won't be able to do anything in this society without that chip. Can't buy, sell, go to the store, nothing. Because that chip is gonna be your social security card, your ID, all your Medicare information, your driver's license, your debit card, everything is gonna be in that chip. So, hey, it's all happening, and this is why you gotta have your eyes peeled, be focused on prophecy, because this world will distract you. Okay, this world is meant to keep you distracted and focus on bullshit. But once you tune into the prophecies, you focus on, what's written, you're looking at the news, you realize, damn, as it says, okay, all this is actually happening. It says in Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 3, for at the end it shall speak and not lie, though it tarry, wait for it, it will certainly happen. Right? So these prophecies are not lying. They're happening exactly as these have been written, and they're not tarrying. Okay? Right now we're seeing how they're happening faster and faster and faster. And it's going to get to a point where, even right now, it's to a point where if I were to open up YouTube, I have so many things I could talk about. But it's going to get to a point where it's going to be too much. Okay, there's going to be too many things happening, and it's going to be impossible to keep up with the relevant news because mass chaos is going to be everywhere. And yeah, so I'll leave it there with that. I'll give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bashim, Bashim, and double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to you, like Shalom.